But it is a delight that although it is not Monday morning, it is Tuesday morning. It is not 7 a.m., it is 8 a.m. And it is a special edition of the SHOPO Hour. And gentlemen in studio with Brother Steve, Brother Mark, and a very, very special guest in studio as well. I'm going to lead off with Steve Keogh and wishing you a very good morning.
Rick, good morning, boys. Good morning. Always happy and grateful to be here with you and your listeners. You look fabulous today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling peachy ducky, bro. Peachy ducky. It's amazing.
Outstanding.
How you doing over there, Brother Mark? You doing some work on the equipment? Tap that thing for me real quick.
Good.
Trying to get there. You go. There you go.
Okay, I'm in.
All right.
Well, good morning, Rick, Steve, Nick. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Brother Steve, do us a favor. Could you introduce Brother Nick, who is in studio with us today?
I'd be happy to do that. Bobby's taking some time off today. We have a great guest that we brought in with us. We have Nick Schlapak. He's a corporal with the Honolulu Police Department, and he's actually our lead union guy here in Honolulu. He's the chairman of the Honolulu board, and we're happy that he could join us today. Morning, Nick.
Good to see you, Nick. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. By the way, it was a pleasure to meet you the other night, for sure.
Yes.
That was, by the way, a great event. Just to be amidst officers, families, celebrating the holidays. Timetable is a little off on Santa, but Santa did arrive.
You handled that so well, Rick. You handled that fabulous, actually.
That was so funny. I was like cracking up. It was so much fun. That was a great day. Yeah, we're gonna have to. Rome's, could we help Brother Mark out? For some reason that
I need a lot of help.
Yeah, well, yeah, not in specific areas, but Mike's is just driving me crazy today. Nick, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, please?
Oh, yes, thank you. My name is Nick Slatepack. I'm the Honolulu chapter chair for SHOPO. I've been affiliated with the union for about 10 years now, and I've been a police officer with the Honolulu Police Department for about 14 and a half years. I've been a patrol officer the entire time, no desk assignments, no rear echelon duties, nothing like that. I've just been a beat cop. You call 911, I'm one of the people that shows up. The first 10 years of my career I spent in District 5 Kalihi, and for the last 4+ years I've been in District 7 East Honolulu.
Wow. What was the catalyst for you to become a police officer and spend it as your career?
I needed a job.
Perfect. There we go. Sounds like Mark, sounds like Steve, and there we go.
No, just a joke. So I had kicked around for a little while and wasted a bunch of time as your average college student back in the 1990s, and never really got anywhere successful, but just finally put my foot down and said, you know what, I got to try and do something that actually means something, and that's going to be productive, and that, if you do it right, if you're there for the right reasons, and you have good support from your family and from your community, that you can actually make a difference and solve problems for people on a daily basis. So yeah. I took the plunge. I never expected to get hired. Every time I got a letter saying you advanced more and more, I was surprised. But at the same time, the day that I got my final acceptance letter saying you're going to start on this date and time, it was a pretty amazing thing. And since then, I've just been rolling along with it every day and doing the best that I can.
Well, first of all, welcome. Glad you're with us here.
Thank you.
And gentlemen, there seems to be some commonality behind Nick's story with not only in the room, but with others.
Well, if I could jump in, Nick is a super humble guy. To put this in perspective, he works day watch each Honolulu, grinding it out as a patrolman. And then his level of responsibility with the union, Rick, is tremendous. He is the head union guy here in Honolulu. Nick, how many on your board?
17.
So Nick's membership here in Honolulu is so large. He has 17 people on the board. He balances a family life with his work responsibilities with the department and then with the union. And we're happy to have him. And I'm happy to brag about him because he's not going to do it himself. He runs the Honolulu chapter is our biggest one statewide. And Nick's actively involved in multiple things going on. And maybe we'll get a chance to touch on those today.
Absolutely. Before we move forward, Nick, what would you, because we've conversed with the fellas for, thank goodness, for almost a year now. I mean, it's coming up to pretty close. What would you like the general public to know about the service in HPD and the role that SHOPO plays.
Well, you know, the service in the Honolulu Police Department, if you are a police officer, if you're interested in being a police officer, it's probably one of the most integral services out there as far as actually helping people on an individual basis, on a day-by-day basis. It's a pretty interesting job as far as problem solving goes. As a former chief of police was famous for saying, Susan Ballard, police officers are excellent problem solvers. That's what they do on a daily basis. It could be a very large problem, or it could be something that you don't even think is a police matter that people need help with, but you're still responsible for doing it. With regards to SHOPO's involvement in the Honolulu Police Department, we are, more than anything else, just kind of we're like a divining rod for balance, essentially. We try and find the best possible outcome for the needs of the police officers as employees, basic employees, and the needs of the department to operate most efficiently and service the public most efficiently. Our article has 57 different contracts in it, or excuse me, our contract has 57 different articles in it, each one of those specifically tuned to making sure that the department gets the most that it can from its employees, but at the same time the employees aren't giving so much that they're no longer individuals, that they actually have specific rights as employees, just like any other labor organization.
All right. There we go. Brother Mark? Thoughts?
Yeah, so, Nick, nice to have you on the show. Thanks for coming. I work with Nick, very well respected, very good worker. You're day watch now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so he used to work midnights when I was over there, so
yes.
It's not an easy thing working midnights. But, as management, right, when I was a major captain, Nick being in the union, but very level-headed, very easy to get along with, and it was a pleasure to work with him, even though, management, union, but like I said, very level-headed and easy. It was a good relationship between the union and management.
Because sometimes that can be trying between union and management, relationships, etc. Nick, before we move on, what do you think the key is to have such great commendable words said about you in the role that you play?
Oh, yeah, thank you. And thank you, Major. That's very nice of you to say. I think the most important thing when you're trying to find that balance is to remember that on a daily basis, things are going to happen in the union and in the department that you can't predict, that there are going to be needs that have been on the table for a while that you're trying to solve, and there are going to be needs that come up just out of the blue at the snap of a finger that you have to solve. You're going to agree very easily on some. You're going to disagree quite a bit on others. The biggest point is to keep that balance of case-by-case basis. You may have a union official who has been very ornery about a particular situation, or an administrator in HPD who has a particular point of view on certain subjects, but at the same time, when you're transitioning to other topics, other issues, you have to keep an open mind that these people, these individuals on both sides of the table, can find good solutions together very easily at times. Again, sometimes it's contentious and it kind of gets drawn out, but at the same time, solutions can be there that are very easy to find. So you have to keep that open mind. Whatever happened yesterday, whatever happened earlier in the day, you have to be able to set that aside when you got your new issue, your new problem that came up. That's really it.
We're already at 8:20 in the morning. We're flying by already, and that means we'll use our time wisely when we return. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bring up a topic of conversation that has to do with Big Island, if that's all right, and then get caught up and get a status update, surveys that have been completed, and a reminder of some of the results and any progress in those areas with our friends, of course, the SHOPO Hour. We will continue right after this.
KHVH.
Brother Nick in for Brother Bobby, and we have, of course, Brother Steve, Brother Mark. It is the SHOPO Hour. I'm going to jump into some of the questions and issues over on the Big Island, and that has to do with a report that aired on Hawaii News Now it was on 10/24, regarding SHOPO and concerns about the utilization of staff, officers for the triathlon. What's it called again?
Ironman.
Ironman thing. I'm old and it's early. About the Ironman. Previous years, I understand, it was not a multi-day event, but it was this year, 2-day event. Secondly, officers would either volunteer on their own time to conduct business. But this time, the return of Ironman, it was mandatory. There was scheduled time. There were issues surrounding helo officers having to make an incredible, we all know the drive, but doing 12-hour shifts and then going back and then coming back. I mean, it was a challenge, and some expressed that since there was a cessation of some investigations and other police work, that it, exposed the city, the county rather, the Big Island, to some additional issues. So that's my kind of summation. If I'm correct, please, I want to make sure that I'm accurate. And secondarily, of course, your thoughts on this story.
Sure. So for your listeners, Ironman is where a bunch of people that are unbelievably fit bike, ride, and swim an incredible amount of time. Normally for our members on the Big Island, it's a one-day event. Because of, I guess, COVID and lack of having the event, the promoters made it a 2-day event. And for your listeners, Rick, our members on the SHOPO side were put in a pretty precarious situation. They were subjected to working conditions that were just pretty outrageous. Some of our members were having to stand at traffic posts for 12 hours without breaks, and we had just heard many different challenges. And ideally, officers are required to report to work for their duty, but the Ironman officers are supposed to volunteer to work that. And what ended up happening, and there was obviously a breakdown, and we're not trying to point fingers, but we don't want it to happen again. And we were actually happy to hear that the Ironman is going to be split up. It's not going to be 2 days anymore on the Big Island. Our members were basically put in a situation where they needed to perform, instead of performing police functions with investigations and whatnot, they were pulled to assist with the Ironman because of the amount of people involved. And we're flexible. We're going to go with it. But to your point, travel times, 20-hour work days, not getting breaks. There was some internal stuff I'll share with your listeners. Guys want to get paid for what they do. They don't necessarily want to take it as time on the books, as comp time. They want to get paid. So there was talk about how this was going to get compensation. So it was disorganized. I don't think the public knew either way because we have police professionals there standing up and doing the job. But man, Rick, our members on the Big Island were put in a bad situation, okay? And we're hoping it doesn't happen again. And as far as what they needed to do to get the job done, they stepped up and did it. They didn't complain. But after it was done, we realized that things were mishandled, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Is there a breach of contract situation?
Actually, there was situations that came up. For example, our members are not supposed to stand at a traffic post for more than 4 hours without relief.
Yeah.
We had reports of officers doing it for 8 to 10 hours.
Wow.
I'm just to give practical examples to your listeners. Bottom line is, the event was done. It was held. I'm sure the participants had a great time. I think some of the businesses were a little pissed off because it affected them a little bit negatively. So hopefully government officials, police leadership, and whatnot moving forward will prepare a little bit better. But I think at the end of the day, not having that be a 2-day event is going to be a big deal. There just wasn't enough police presence to handle that event for those people that signed up voluntarily. So then officers that reported to work that day, the way I understand it is the resources were directed from patrol and investigations to cover the Ironman staffing that wasn't happening.
Right.
Yep.
Was there an allocation or a disbursement of any funds from the Hawaii Council to either SHOPO or to HPD, Hawaii, the Big Island Police Department? Because I understand there was an allocation made.
So the way I understand it, Rick, is and again, this is what my understanding was, is that the Ironman sponsors gave a donation.
Donation, yeah.
We'll call it a donation Do I think that's something that was done like that in the past? I can't say for certain, but normally the monies are paid when officers work. A donation for, my question would be, what is that donation for exactly? What are you giving a donation? What are you hoping to, how's that? What are you hoping to get from that donation?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know how that donation thing
Right.
works,
I don't,
but-
I'm just, yeah.
So I'll tell you what happens over here sometimes. We have these, what they call them, city-sponsored events, okay? Which means on-duty personnel, actually the police department is required by the city to provide personnel, right? And as a commander, when I was a sergeant, when I was a lieutenant, drove me nuts because you're losing staffing because you're required to send this staffing to this event, whether it be parades or
Ho'olaleas are
another one, right? City-sponsored events, right? So now you have all this staffing. Now you have to dedicate it to that, and you're going to lose personnel. Drove us nuts, but you have to because it's by order. It's coming from the city, right? So I don't know if this had anything to do with it. I don't know if it was a city-sponsored event or it was kind of weird. It was just a donation.
And local,
You know.
and Rick, if I could, our local union leadership there, James Kana Correa, he's the Big Island chair. He actually did an interview with certain news publications to discuss some of the challenges that our members went through that day. And again, we're not complaining here, but there was definitely things that could have been handled differently. Our members stepped up and did the job, but as far as the contract and certain things not being followed, that was out the window. But we needed to get the job done, and they stuck it out.
So I know I have to take a break here in a moment, but I want to follow up on this very quickly. There are 4 candidates for chief of police, Big Island. 4 candidates. Has there been any influence for what transpired in this dust-up regarding the Ironman with perhaps a sitting member of Hawaii Police Department who is up for chief of police? I know we have one Oahu candidate. Ben is part of the finalists. Were there any local Hawaii Police Department candidates, and is there an effect on that candidacy based on this story?
Well, Rick, that's a powerful question that you ask. I believe there is one individual that is looking to be the chief of police, and there's some things going on in terms of the role that individual played in this event. So I would, to answer your question, I would say yes. But again, as we've talked about on your show, the police commissioners are going to have that tremendous responsibility of making that decision. And to your point, I'm sure if there's something that came up regarding police leadership that did or didn't happen, or things weren't done maybe the way they should have been done, then I'm sure the commissioners are going to take that into account. To be direct with you, I don't think that would help a candidate. If there's a candidate running and there's some allegation that maybe something was mishandled or not done properly, to your point, I don't see that helping that candidate.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the police commissioners will do their due diligence over there on the Big Island, and they'll work it all out and hopefully pick the best candidate to lead that agency and our members over there.
Has the commission communicated any progress in ETA when the naming of a new chief will take place?
Not Rick, not to us directly.
Okay.
No, at the state level and our we have not heard anything directly from them.
Okay, there we go. Thanks for all of that, and we're going to be back in a moment. It is the SHOPO Hour here on News Radio 830 KHVH. Stand by. We are going to chat a little bit about Waikiki when we return. So stand by. More to come. It's 8:33. Welcome back, everybody. 6:40 in the morning. Here on News Radio 830 KHVH, I'm going to ask the gentleman to give us an update on the World Cup. Mark? Anyways, so.
Yeah, okay.
That was a very, very short exchange, and there we have it. I can't. I mentioned the word Waikiki because once again we're in a situation where a lot of folks are mentioning a lot of different things. As a matter of fact, in a recent news report, the quotation "anything can happen," and this has to do with what's taken place recently. I mean, it's just been an unbelievable spate. However, I caution, and help me understand too, this is not in order to define. It's not a definition of Waikiki. They are events that are taking place. and we endeavor to mitigate all things of grave circumstance, but it's impossible. But when things like this occur, the general public, first thing, oh my God, we're no longer safe. Oh my goodness, we're this, that, and the other. Anything can happen at any time, and that rolls. The latest story, the latest two stories. One, the barricade situation, where the individual, I'm surprised that there was footage released, of the perpetrator in a hotel hallway. I'm like, ew. And then another story where an individual was beaten by 5 others and lost his life. So I'd like to turn it over, Nick and boys. Just these stories, it's fomenting more of expressions of unsafe and very, very concerned about Waikiki.
Want me to start off?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so it's unfortunate, right? These two incidents happened,
Yeah.
right? Okay, let's go with the barricade situation. You can't fix stupid, okay? It's not something happening all the time, but then the news loves to sell their papers. They love to sell their apps, right? Waikiki, high concentration of population between people living there and the tourist in a 1.5 mile radius. You're going to have some stuff going on over there. But stuff like the barricade, stuff like the beating, they're isolated incidents. It's not like they're happening every hour. They're happening every day, right? You're going to have stuff happen down there. Let's face it, between our judicial system, the way the prosecutors handle things, the way the judges throw things out, the way the ACLU is backing up all these idiots, you're lucky that's all you have down there, right? I was down there the other night. I got some people staying in town from the East Coast, and I purposely walked around. Actually, it's pretty good down there. So, but I guess they got to sell news, right? It's really not that bad down there. But like I said, you're lucky that's all you got. But it's actually pretty safe down there. It's not that bad.
Nick, what do you make of it?
Well, I haven't worked in Waikiki since 2009, and in fact, that's where I met Major Criccio when I believe you were a patrol sergeant out there, sir, and we did an operation where we were tasked with addressing street peddlers, if I'm not mistaken. He's absolutely correct. Highest population density in the state. Every time the U.S. Census comes out, 8 out of 10 places in the entire state that have the highest density are going to be within that 1.5 mile area. I want to stress that anything can happen at any time. SHOPO does have to respond to situations where an officer discharges a firearm. It's one of our responsibilities. And I've been to several in my time as the chapter chair and as a director. Barricaded situations, they can happen anywhere. I've been to them in District 2, out in the North Shore area. I've been to a few in Pearl City, in suburban areas, literally areas where people are living in 1 or 2 story houses next to each other. I've been to them in buildings like the one on Kuhio Avenue last week. Anything can happen anywhere. Unfortunately, one of our jobs in that kind of situation is we're reactive, right? You have a member of the community who sets the tone, and we simply have to come in and again try and correct it, try and fix it. People do get robbed, stabbed, have their property stolen, have their cars stolen everywhere else on the island. Is it a bit more alarming because of Waikiki and it's the emphasis on tourism, economy? Yes, but at the same time, these things do happen elsewhere, and I don't think that it's geographically specific in any way whatsoever.
One of the things, unfortunately, is that it was marathon weekend that was fast approaching, and Japanese tourists were coming back. I had friends of mine that monitor such things, and the lead story with Japanese television news was barricade in Waikiki. And so this is the imagery that is being portrayed. I'm not going to blame media, and it's definitely not any responsibility or fault or anything with law enforcement. It is unfortunate because that's the impression people are going to have, just like they do here at home. They're having in the conversations and the calls and statements that are made. I don't know how else to assuage that impression, because it will have a net effect. It will on Japanese returning. I understand that one of the biggest things, it's not the economy. It's the economy, yes. The value of the yen versus the dollar, yes. It's an issue, and no doubt about it. However, top of mind.
You're kidding yourself if you think that these two events don't have a negative impact on Waikiki. Of course they do. That disclaimer needs to be put out there. But let me put this a different way. Here's the positive outcome. The men and women that wear the uniform kept the community safe. When that barricade situation came off, you had a male that was clearly disturbed, going through whatever he wanted to do. He made that decision. He ended up checking out and meeting his maker that day. But the professionalism of the Specialized Services Division and the patrol officers that responded, they contained that threat. They attempted to preserve life. They attempted for hours to try to get this individual to make a different choice, to not make the decision he made. At the end of the day, leadership on scene made a decision. Talking was finished. We need to go in. We need to do something. And at the end of the day, the threat was neutralized. Cops went home safe. Nobody in the community was hurt. And in that case, it was a win. It was tragic that it happened. We could talk down some rabbit holes about society and where things are going, but I just want to acknowledge that the men and women of the Honolulu Police Department that responded to that event, they were professional, they handled it, and again, nobody from the public and none of our officers got hurt.
Headphones, gentlemen, we're going to take a very quick call, and before we take our final break for this hour, special edition of the SHOPO Hour today, and we're going to go to Diane in Waikiki. Diane, thank you for your call. And Diane, welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Rick. I live at Seaside Avenue and was privy to whatever I could see for hours and hours. And I do want to say, commend all the officers who were involved. I'm glad nobody got hurt. I'd like to say two things. Number one, somebody talked to me, a friend of mine, and said a lot of these barricade situations are death by cop. Now, I'm sure you gentlemen have heard that term. I never have. But could it have been a situation like that the man wanted to kill himself, couldn't do it, and staged this whole thing? We've seen nothing more about what the situation is. At least I haven't seen anything. And I thank all of you for what you do, but this is going to impact. I don't feel safe. Let me just say this. I've lived here for 24 years, and I don't feel safe anymore. I mean, I'm 84 years old. I don't go out at night anymore. I'm afraid. So I'd like to, if you want to comment to me, please, about death by cop, I'll take your answer off the line, okay?
Thank you, Diane, for the call. Give me a moment. I'm going to take this final break. When we come back, we'll have a reply for Diane and wrap things up on this already 8:50 in the morning on this Aloha Tuesday. Gentlemen, thoughts regarding Diane's calls, her call, comments, and question. Who'd like to go?
Yeah, Diane, thank you for calling. I appreciate that. And thank you for commending officers for keeping everybody safe. And that's something the news didn't cover, how none of the public was harmed in this, and what a great job the officers did to contain that situation. So maybe the news could put that in their little story. To your question, your death by cop, yeah, they call it suicide by cop. Yes. Does it happen? Is it real? Yes, it's real, and it's something that happens all over this country. And in this situation, we don't know. We're not privy to the investigation, so it'll come out if that was the case. However, one thing these officers, when they go to work, that's the last thing they want to do is discharge their firearms. And for people to put these officers in that situation, shame on them, So it's traumatizing. And Nick, you know more than me on that because you respond to that. But is it real? Yes. Suicide by cop? Yes. So in this situation, we don't know. We're not privy to it. So.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to touch base on one thing that I think I can release from that situation, and that is that that began on what we call the day watch, which operates from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. And the initial call and response from the patrol officers came out somewhere between 1 and 2 p.m. You had a watch change then that came out and assisted as well, and then you had our Specialized Services Division respond. Please keep in mind when we talk about the sacrifice and the amount of time and stress that police officers put in on the job, some of these officers had started their morning at 6 or 7 in the morning, and they didn't leave that scene until almost 4 in the morning the next day. So it was almost a 24-hour period for them. Very little opportunity to eat, use the restroom, obviously, get no rest whatsoever in the roughly 12 hours that incident occurred. So that's the type of commitment and effort and sacrifice that officers have to put in when an extended barricaded situation like that happens.
And Rick, just for the listeners, I'm just going through my mind of all of the police resources that were used to make sure that the community would be safe. You had obviously the Specialized Services Division that in this type of scenario, when they get on scene, they take command of that. So that's our SWAT guys. You had the motorcycle units there dealing with traffic, making sure that the roads were blocked off. You had the patrol officers there that worked that beat, know that area, first on scene, identified that it was a barricade situation, made the right calls to get everything in play. You have the command staff out of District 6, the lieutenant, the captain, the leadership of that particular district. Then within our CID, you have the detectives, you have the hostage, you have the trained hostage folks that come out. So there was a tremendous amount of police resources that were used. And look, we realize that as an agency, this was a inconvenience to residents and an inconvenience to tourists. But unfortunately, it took 14 hours. I know Nick and myself, Nick heard comments from people because he was on scene. Couldn't you have done it quicker? Couldn't you have done it faster? The answer is no. No, it took the time it took. And at the end of the day, cops and the community, cops went home safe, the community safe. But again, to Diane's question, Diane, you're in your 80s. I think it's a smart call that you're not walking around at night, but I don't want you to live in fear. Don't let that take your consciousness up. Spend time with your friends, get out in the community, don't isolate yourself, stay connected with people, and just know that HPD has got your back. Waikiki is safe. You just have to make smart decisions.
On that note, gentlemen, Nick, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Absolutely so. Brother Steve, Brother Mark, we will see you in a bar soon.
I appreciate that, Rick. And can I just put out to the listeners, our new website is up and running. Please come and visit us at shopohawaii.org. Please come take a look. Thank you.
And there we have it. Gentlemen, thanks so very much.